Welcome to the Darkside Podcast.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Bruce Swartz. I'm from Montreal, Quebec, and this is the Darkside Podcast. We have lots of things that we talk about on these podcasts, things that interest us, things that, the government's always hiding stuff from us or trying to downgrade or not talk to us about certain issues that occur that could alarm the people and or that could affect the system, the money system, from working. EMP attacks. Why am I talking about this right now? We have several Chinese balloons, which China has admitted by mistake they would have come over Canada from the North Pole and cross over the United States over bases, military bases, where there are storing ballistic missiles hidden underground. And we have these balloons going by, supposedly surveillance balloons from China, so they say. But aside from that, if you look at all the posts, all the reports in the news that are coming out, they're talking about an electromagnetic pulse attack, and they're talking about a Chinese stowaway, if you want, spy balloon. But here's the thing. The balloon was spotted over Montana, USA, hovering and stationary. And then, I believe, over Oklahoma City, a trajectional change. Now, how could that occur if it's just a balloon? And my God, guys, not just any balloon. These, actually, that's why I'm saying these. We have 1, 2, possibly 3 balloons that are following each other, one behind the other at a certain distance, that are supposedly the size of 3 school buses, both in height, even higher, so I heard. But before we get into EMP attacks, there are several types of EMP, electromagnetic pulsation attacks, that can occur. We have our sun, back in 1989, took down the grid in Quebec. Do you guys know that it cost us here in Quebec hundreds of billions of dollars to be able to repair the damage that was caused by the sun? So when solar storms happen, electromagnetic pulse attacks, or attacks also from the sun, do you understand there could be adversarial or foreign countries that can attack us with an EMP attack? But also, that sun is very dangerous for us, and it's like a gamble every time the sun, depending on where it's facing, and there's a massive flash or X flare that either skims Earth, like in 1989, it skimmed Earth's orbit. If it would have hit us directly, there would have been a lot more damage here in Quebec. Guys, here in Quebec, lots of the towers, if not most of them, completely fell down. Massive lines. I'm not talking about the small posts in the streets. We're talking about massive towers with high tension wires that were destroyed by a layer of ice that started developing during this 3, 4, 5-day storm, ice storm, that almost completely devastated, that's right, Quebec and all of Canada, the country of Canada. Now, there was, I think it was 2014, that there was a massive coronal mass ejection from the sun that was not facing Earth. Guys, if it was facing Earth, it would have been larger than the Carrington event in 1859 that happened in the United Kingdom. The Carrington event. Do you understand that there are several dangers of EMP attacks, not only from adversarial countries or foreign countries, but from our own sun? And the Carrington event in the UK in 1859 was the most intense geomagnetic storm in recorded history, peaking from the 1st to the 2nd of September back in 1859 during the solar cycle 10. It created strong auroral displays that were reported globally, and it caused sparking and even fires to multiple telegraph stations. The geomagnetic storm was most likely the result of a coronal mass ejection, a CME, from the sun colliding with Earth's magnetosphere. The geomagnetic storm was associated with a very bright solar flare on the 1st of September 1859. It was observed and recorded independently by British astronomers Richard Christopher Carrington and Richard Hodgson, the first records of any solar flare. A geomagnetic storm of this magnitude occurring today would cause widespread electrical disruptions, blackouts, and damage due to the extended outages of the electrical power grid. The impact of this Carrington event caused auroras to be seen around the world. Those in the northern hemisphere, as far as south as the Caribbean, the aurora over the Rocky Mountains in the United States was so bright that the glow woke up gold miners while they were sleeping, who began preparing breakfast because they thought it was morning. I love that one. People in the northeastern United States could read a newspaper outside at night, in the middle of the night, and see it very clearly. All the words on the newspaper, or reading a book. It was daytime. Think of it. But something like that happens today, and it will. It's not a matter of if it does or not. It's a matter of when. Because don't forget, I'm going to repeat it again, we have the sun that can do this to us. That's aside from other stars and other theories. But we also have adversarial countries like those balloons that are traveling or traveled over Canada from the North Pole over Canada and are now being seen. Spy balloons, even though China apologizes and admits that it's just surveillance balloons. But they don't need cameras and satellites that low to get nice images, because they can do it with their own satellites. They can see a penny on the ground and see the date on the ground. So what are those balloons? Either way, they are not allowed in that airspace. And someone mentioned this afternoon at the live stream, said, well, there's no indication that it's China. There's no label or anything on it. And that's true. It could be over top the label. Maybe that's what they are not showing us. But the nuclear reactors and nuclear cores and the 100 or 200 that are around the world, what the heck do you think would happen if there was an electromagnetic pulsation attack? And this is sending out particles when it happens, an abrupt explosion of either from low frequency to high frequency to UV, ultraviolet, radiation that is propagated outwards. Who knows how far outwards, 100 miles, 100 kilometers, I don't know, but would take out an entire city or maybe even entire metropolitans. So this is scary stuff, and it's a possibility that they're saying that this is a dry run or a preemptive run of the Chinese, the CCP, that are coming over the States to look at where certain ballistic missiles are placed in certain bases, because it went over a very important base in the United States. Anyway, spotted over Montana, Oklahoma City, and it was caught in Montana, USA, to have been stationary and then a trajectory change. So there's apparently people in China that are operating these balloons, by the way, because there was talk of one, then talk of two, and now talk of 3 balloons. So what do the balloons have to do with the EMP attacks? Well, if, for example, that was a preemptive dry run on how they were going to do an EMP to see how long it takes for the balloons to get there. Don't forget, these balloons are the size of 3 school buses. Nobody knows what's inside. There could be many mechanisms inside. The Pentagon yesterday on February the 3rd, 2023, said that it was they were going to be allowed to shoot it down. I don't know today on the 4th of February if they waited till it got over the ocean and did it, or if they even did it at all. There has not been much more talk about these mysterious balloons, surveillance or spy balloons, that are going over the States now, and over Canada and the States, which, by the way, apparently Canada did not even mention. There are 3 types of EMP attacks. Don't forget, we have the sun, we can have from an adversarial country or a foreign country. And there's another attack where it can affect all the devices, but there's also an attack where it can run through the wires and affect all the transmitters. And all these things can happen at any given moment. And when a blackout happens and all those cores are going to go out, right? They're going to blow up, right? Apparently, diesel generators are going to save them. Don't forget, in a blackout, all things like dams, that are all controlled, that go up and down to control the levels of the water. Nothing is going to work. No communication is going to work, right? You're going to say you can use a CB after the blackout or when things go down. Well, not if your CB is sitting on a counter in your home, because that EMP blast could take out all of your devices, plugged or not. Very important during an EMP attack or hearing of a real blackout and you're sure it's going to happen, you unplug all your devices. Now, again, the Carrington event that caused fires in the telegraph lines and killed people and electrocuted people. We have a lot more electricity today. So those nuclear cores, all those nuclear plants all around the world that are supposed to be all controlled by, when there's a blackout, generators that have diesel generators and keeping everything cool. If they don't, it's an Armageddon. Absolutely catastrophic when the tsunamis arrive there and hit these nuclear plants, because the nuclear plants, think of it, everything that's electrical, all the pumps, everything controlling to maintain these nuclear plants in a blackout are all on ground, outside, no security. And this is what a former CIA director was talking about in a meeting I overheard this afternoon, where he was saying the electrical grid, alternating current, developing current and selling it anywhere and everywhere you want to, and at the same time having to upkeep the maintenance of the power grid. There's no security on our power grid anywhere. Everything's easy to have taken out. And recently here in Quebec, there was a guy from China, a spy that was working for Hydro-Quebec. And could you only imagine, now that he has the entire plans of the entire power grid here in Canada, or of course in Quebec, imagine, and he did, sending all that information back to China so that they could either, one, build their own power grid. Oh, that's okay. But I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they want to know how to take out our power grid. And by having all those blueprints, they can very easily know where to strike. And to cause an EMP is not hard at all. All you have to do is launch it into orbit. And what happens is a big enough blast in orbit will cause an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, to take everything out, like to black out the grid. So these transformers here in Quebec and around the world, states too, that are all built, took several years to build. And a blackout, that doesn't just mean that the electricity goes out and then will come back up. It means that all those connections, and by the time they find out everything that's broken and has to be changed, would take, without being ridiculous at all here, like what, from 3, 10, 20 years to set it all back up. And not talking about, honestly, trillions of dollars. Here in 1989, they're not sure if it wasn't 1.3 trillion it cost. Just that ice storm that we had because of the CME from the sun. But hey, they weren't bragging about that on the news. I found out 20, 30 years later when I started researching online. But the Americans found out about EMPs way back with Starfish Prime. It was a high altitude nuclear test that the United States of America conducted, a joint effort of the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, and the Defense Atomic Support Agency. It was launched, so they launched it, right, from Johnston Atoll on July 9th, 1962. So this was the largest nuclear test that was ever conducted in space, and one of 5 conducted by the U.S. in space. A Thor rocket carrying a W-49 thermonuclear warhead designed at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, and MK2 reentry vehicle was launched from Johnston Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. So we're talking about 900 miles, which is 1,450 kilometers, southwest of Hawaii. So this explosion takes place at an altitude of 250 miles, 400 kilometers, above a point 19 miles, 31 kilometers, southwest of Johnston Atoll. So this test, Starfish Prime, so they call it, it caused an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP, that was far larger than ever expected, obviously. So much larger, actually, that it actually drove much of the instrumentation off scale, like off the charts. So this was causing, obviously, great difficulty in getting accurate measurements. So the Starfish Prime electromagnetic pulse also made those effects known to the public by causing electrical damage in Hawaii, about 900 miles away from the detonation point. Whoa, okay, 900 miles away, guys, from the point of explosion. Imagine, from point zero, knocking out about 300 streetlights, setting off numerous burglar alarms. It damaged a telephone company. Also, the EMP damage to the microwave link shut down telephone calls from Kauai to the other Hawaiian islands. So, for those who didn't understand that, basically the United States of America found out how to create an EMP attack, right? Though judging them was maybe not their first thought, but could it have been? Obviously. And then, sharing data or having data leaked, or spies that are infiltrated in certain countries, then this information gets out to countries adversarial or foreign, like Russia, let me guess, China, obviously, so that they can come back and attack us here on our own grounds with our own technology. But basically, that's what war is all about. It's always been a game, right? Oh, I promise you, this is going to be educational if you want to know exactly everything about the EMPs. This is from a recent meeting, former CIA agents and a whole bunch of important people talking about the power grid. So they say you have 3 components, right, with EMPs. You have a nuclear attack, that's one component, and we have lightning, that's another component where people deal with, rescue life and everything, to also have certain problems with devices because of lightning that we all know. But the 2 that are the most important are the low and the high frequencies. And for you to understand it well enough, low frequency, which is a long wavelength pulse, it's the same as what you get from the sun when the sun reacts and sends a coronal mass ejection to Earth. And you have the very high frequency, short wavelength pulse, a little confusing here, that causes damage to solid state electronics and devices. So there's different ways that EMPs can attack. So it's not for nothing that they did tests back in the days to experiment on certain massive explosions, large bursts of energy at different levels and heights in the atmosphere, all the way up into orbit. So they know now, by setting something off in orbit that's large enough, will take up the grid or even take out devices. Don't forget, you have the short wavelength, which is our problem with the sun. That's what we're worried about. And we have adversarial countries that can cause the same damage as the sun could cause. So now, let me guess. Oh, why have they been experimenting with frequencies? Even with secret projects? Well, it's not for nothing. Because the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies are the most dangerous. So now we know that they're going to have to design a system, standby system, that will be able to replenish the community, every one of us, with electricity, with a means of communication. When the grid goes down, guys, and everything is in blackout, that means the cold regions start freezing really fast. The sewer systems back up. They flood back up into the house. You have no water because your water is not coming to the house because the pumps in town are not running to send them to communities. You have money that you will not be able to use because ATM machines and banks and nothing will be functional. Nothing. Even if they make us believe that they're going to keep all the diesel generators operating every nuclear plant around the world, considering we're right in a cataclysmic event and that everyone's running with their heads cut off, that would be ridiculous to think that we could be absolutely safe. Once everything goes out, and if probably for sure that tsunamis hit, all the pumps will be taken out, all the water and what's protecting the cores and cooling everything down so that nothing explodes will be in danger of heating up and mixing into the water and being pulled back into the ocean. And oh my God, the damage that would cause to everything, all living creatures, including us, it would be cataclysmic. But what I just talked about today is what the higher elites are talking about, you can be sure. Whether they're trying to cause this or there are still good people here on this planet that are trying to save us from it, I think there's a bit of both. It's a fight between good and evil. Everyone, thank you so very much for taking the time to listen to this podcast.